Now let's go to another youngster in our community, Lauren. Lauren, she is double majoring while she's finishing her bachelor. She's also doing her master at the same time. She's gonna present one of our members of the community who's supposed to attend today's meeting. Brother Muad, he's a pharmacist. Because of his conflict of schedule with his work, he sent a message. She's going to read his message for us, plus her observation vis-a-vis the Georgia State University student, how they're doing, what challenge they face. And Lauren,
good afternoon. So first we're going to talk about the message from Brother Muaz, if that's correct.
Yes.
So he said, first of all, thanks to the virtual community meeting organizers, and pleasure to meet to participate in this meeting. I would just like to say or point out some things. As many of us know, immigrants or other minority group youth have many challenges. The fundamental problems of those challenges are many, but to name a few: lack of better educators, recurring teachers to our school system by giving extra incentives. The majority of parents in our schools are working 2 jobs and to put bread on the kitchen table for entire family members, such that they don't have enough time to oversight their children. Since there is no parent monitoring at home after school days, and young students come home and have many open opportunities to join or participate in various types of unwanted groups, media, and habit and addiction. This activity prohibits them from becoming productive members of the community, such that we need to work hard to find a solution. For example, develop after-school programs, including activities and homework help or tutoring. Universities or colleges in the country are not adequately participating on the local public school supporting activities or programs. Colleges and universities in the country or public schools need to develop and coordinate relationship to work together to help local and public school students. A lack of parent involvement in our schools, in our public schools. Our public schools need to find a way to organize or invite parents to be involved more in their children's school. Our youngsters who are released from prison have a hard time to assimilate to society. When our youngest are in prison, we need to prepare them to join a workforce so after they finish their sentencing. For example, providing them job training or teaching them some type of skill that will help them live. Lack or minimal local business and public school coordination. So in being able to invite and encourage local businesses to be involved in the local public school activities. Our local public libraries do not have enough space and need to be open for an extended time. So local libraries need to work to add more space and build new libraries to extend their operation times for students and children to use. Some local or non-local role models are not invited or involved to help our public schools or our students. There are many role models around the country that are willing to help. Public school administrators or country public officials or community members who have access to those people need to organize and invite those role models to help our school system. Then we can minimize most of our youth problems. So that was very well said by Brother Muaz. But in the case of the Georgia State student body, there are a few things that need to be addressed. So in my time of talking to most of the Georgia State student body, I've come up with a list of different things that have been a recurring issue that I've noticed among our student body. So a first thing would be to have a more streamlined version of iCollege. So where it's easy to have everything in just one place instead of having to click in multiple different areas to be able to get to like just one assignment or to be able to get to just one class. And for professors to take accountability for adding on extra stress to the students. So they're not taking into consideration, other classes when they assign work, and they're not taking consideration the fact that we are in a quarantine in a very stressful time of a pandemic. And it's almost as if they are keeping the same workload that they would have when it was in as if we were in school in class, and just putting it back online, which that does not work. Or at least giving, a pass fail option. So a lot of students are having to teach themselves from the asynchronous modules, and the ton of like the textbook assignments. So we're not really learning anything per se. It's just, us reading and having to make assignments from it. So that's not necessarily a good thing when the teachers expect you to have learned the material a certain way versus, just having to read from the book. So having a pass fail option that, maybe the students or teachers could choose from would be a very good asset to have. And some professors do overstep boundaries when it comes to our home. So, rules with our WebEx or Zoom meetings, saying that we have to be in class at a certain time when obviously our lives are a bit different now, staying from home, and not everyone has that same stability in their home life as they would being at school. And that's about those are the main few bullet points that I would like to point out when it comes to talking about the Georgia State student body. But I really do appreciate everyone having me talk today and just to voice some concerns.
Thank you very much, Lauren, for the information that you put it. We as a parent, we as a community leader and server, the purpose of this meeting, as you see, is I bring you to sample of different from the student body, from the parent, from the law enforcement, from faith leader, to put into perspective. Before we go to the other segment of the question, from Hibak, and then from Lauren and Pastor Morn, what has been raised? Judge Shondeana, what is your thought and what is your response? And then Chief Ramos and Ms. Boston as well, if you would address some of the concern of the community.
Okay. Well, in terms of all of the points that have come out thus far, and I'm going to speak specifically about suicide awareness and prevention at this point. So I do agree that, we have to focus on the resources that we have that can assist. And I'm going to start by telling you all just a brief court encounter that I had. And so this was probably about 2 years ago. So prior to serving as a Superior Court judge, I served as a state court traffic division judge. And the matters that the traffic division handle are under the official code of Georgia annotated Title 40. They range from running a stop sign, running a red light, following too closely, regular routine traffic matters, speeding. So one day I was having my court calendar and a young lady came to court and she had on pajamas. And so I had to do a double take because I was thinking, who in the world would come to court in pajamas? And when I say pajamas, I'm talking about the full onesie with the feet. And so I halted court for a moment and I inquired of the young lady. I said, are you here in pajamas? And she had an attitude and she was somewhat disruptive. So as a result of that, my deputy sheriff, my bailiff, addressed her, and the young lady then said, hey, if you don't want me to be here, I'll just leave. Well, that's not how court goes. So long story short, I had to take her into custody briefly, and while I had her in custody, she was given an opportunity to call a parent or a family member. So I went on, I proceeded with court that day, waiting until we were able to conclude court. And then her mother came. So her mother asked if she could approach the bench, and I said, sure. So the young lady wasn't in court. She was in the holding room close to where my chambers were. And so her mother told me, she said, listen, she said, just 2 days ago, my daughter said that she wanted to die, that she wanted to kill herself. And her daughter was probably around the age of 20, 24, 25. And she said, you know, it seems like nothing ever goes right with my daughter. She just recently found out that her young child, the young lady's child, there were allegations of child molestation close in proximity to where she lived. And so she was just dealing with a lot. So after speaking to the mother, I brought the young lady back in and I said, hey, do you recognize anybody here? And she said, yes, my mother. And I said, you know, you should be very thankful that you have a loving mother and a parent who is here for you. And so at that point in time, the young lady, she just broke down and cried. And she said, you know, Judge, she said, my day started off bad. She said, I was rushing because I didn't have money to get my child Pampers. She said, so I had to borrow some money. She said, I don't have a car. I had to get a friend to help me. And so she said, things were just going bad. And so she said she knew it wasn't a good idea to come to court in pajamas, but the friend who she was with was like, oh, it's better to come than not come. So just come as you are. And so when she appeared and she said, you know, I'm sorry, but I just can't seem to get things on track. And so as a result of that conversation, we were able to, not that day, but ultimately resolve her traffic issue, but it was much bigger than that because we were able to get her some resources that she needed to seek counseling and kind of help redirect her life. And I remember the last thing that she said to me when she was in court that day, she was like, Judge, the next time I appear before you, I'm not going to have on pajamas, and you will see me in a suit and I will have my life where it needs to be. And she held tight to that promise. So I say all that to say that, you know, with the courts, whether it's the courts, whether it's the district attorney's office, the sheriff's office, all of the various shareholders, you know, we want to do things that positively impact our community. Now, obviously, the role of a judge is to ensure that there is a fair process and that all of your matters can be heard in a timely manner. But outside of being on the bench, we try to ensure that there are the resources necessary for us to have a wonderful and a better community. I will also share with you all that in terms of youth and suicide awareness and prevention in Georgia, and I'm big on stats, so I think it helps to bring things in perspective and where we are in our community. So back earlier this year, around February of 2020, the Atlanta Journal and Constitution did an article, and the title of that article was, Why More Georgia Teens Are Attempting Suicide and How Can We Help? So in 2019, just last year, there were 78,969 Georgia children that considered suicide. And between the age of 10 and 17 years of age, the second leading cause of death behind unintentional injuries to children was suicide. In 2018, there were 63 children. I didn't say adults, but 63 children that committed suicide. And in Dekalb County alone, 75% of the children involved in the juvenile justice system have experienced some type of traumatic victimization. And so I bring that up in that stat because oftentimes that you will find with our youth and our adults that they have experienced some type of trauma, some type of victimization in which there are underlying issues that they haven't addressed or the resources haven't been there for them to address, which leads to depression, anxiety, and suicide. There were approximately 62,000 6th to 12th graders in Georgia in a survey that reported that they intentionally harmed themselves. And, you know, some of the things that we need to look at, you know, outside of my role as a judge, one of the things that we need to look at is, all of the access to social media. As far as the parents, you need to look and monitor what your children are watching. There's bullying on social media, and there's all sorts of things. So I will at this time kind of talk to you all just very briefly about some of the main risk factors for suicide, and then I will talk about some of our resources. In terms of the main risk factors for suicide, they are depression, other mental disorders, or substance abuse disorders. And that's why I said in DeKalb County, in terms of the courts, how the courts try to help in DeKalb County is with our accountability courts. So as I stated to you all earlier, we have drug court, we have mental health court, we have parental accountability court, and we have veteran court, because what we have found is that a number of our participants have underlying mental health and substance abuse issues. And so we have the resources that what makes our accountability courts unique from other accountability courts, and what makes it successful is that we have a holistic approach, but not only a holistic approach, but we have an in-house team that kind of treats a little bit of everything. So what makes DeKalb County unique, and specifically with our accountability courts, is that we provide in-house evidence-based treatment services while adhering to the state and national treatment standards. And so most of the accountability courts outsource or contract out their treatment services, thus impacting the fidelity of the program, but not in DeKalb County. What we do is we keep our services in-house. DeKalb County provides in-house psychiatric services to all dual diagnosed participants to ensure that they are receiving the most appropriate level of care while in treatment. DeKalb County also contracts with a local pharmacy to ensure that program participants, if need be, have access to medication as it is necessary for both their physical and mental health compliance. In addition to that, in terms of some of the main risk factors for suicide, they involve certain medical conditions, chronic pain, prior suicide attempts, a family history of mental disorder or substance abuse, a family history of suicide, family violence, including physical or sexual abuse. And I don't know if Madam DA Boston is going to talk about this, but I know that she mentioned earlier in her introductions how that just given with COVID, that her office has seen an increase in domestic violence cases. And so she may talk about that, but those are also some of the factors in terms of suicide attempts and suicides. It also, some of the factors are having guns or firearms in the home, having recently been released from prison or jail, being exposed to other suicidal behaviors such as that of a family member, peers, or celebrities. Trouble sleeping and eating are also things that, well, some of the things that you may notice. If it's someone that has just been kind of don't really want to get out of bed, or the normal activities that they would normally do, they're kind of trying to isolate themselves. They're not really eating that much, not really sleeping, very distant. Those are some of the things that we can look out for. And I will tell you, oftentimes, I think someone mentioned, one of our community partners mentioned during this, that it's something that the community doesn't really want to talk about. And so I will share with you that within my family didn't talk about it. What happened with my father, my family said, oh, just tell people that your dad had a heart attack. And we don't want people to know. And that caused a lot of issues within the home and within my family. And so we had to, as a family and individually, we went and we got counseling. And it was a lengthy process, but I say that to say, these are things that we need to talk about. We need to be open with our children, with our spouses, with our friends, and we need to listen. And so if you observe some of these things, don't be afraid to talk to the person. There's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and that number is 800-273-8255. And we also have the Dekalb Regional Crisis Center, in which that number is 404-294-0499. And we have the Georgia Suicide Crisis Hotline, which that number is 404-892-4646. And that there was also in terms of resources, there's the Department of Education Project Aware, which helps educators recognize signs that students might be under some type of duress or stress. And the Georgia Crisis and Access Line, that telephone number is 800-715-4225. And what I will do is I will make sure that I provide all of this information so that you all will have it.
Appreciate it, Judge. It's really well outlined. I have written down the numbers. I'm gonna share it and send it the email to all the members. If you would also shoot me that email with what additional resources that are available, what you just outlined, I'm gonna share it with the rest of the members of the community, who those are here, or those are not here. Sherief, Boston, you wanna add to what the judge said?
I just want to thank Judge Morris for everything that she presented, and in particular her leadership on this issue, both locally in DeKalb and at the state bar, so that we can continue to serve our communities. I only have a few minutes before I head to my next meeting, but I want to make sure I address any particular questions, Imam, Wazir, that you want me to address before I have to go. If not, I'm happy to, say a few other things about our work, but I just want to make sure there's not a particular issue you want me to focus on right now.
I do have a question, if you don't mind, Imam.
Yes.
Go ahead, please go ahead.
Yes, the question that I have is, what is DeKalb County doing in regards to trying adolescents or teenagers as adults? Because there are times where, our superior court will take a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old and try them as an adult, and they could be maybe a first-time offender or something like that. So is there anything that you're doing in particular to take it back to juvenile court? And maybe because these kids sometimes just, they're going through a lot of things, the parents may not be as involved, and, the parents may not understand. So we do need someone to maybe they need help, they need guidance. So what's DeKalb County District Attorney doing about that?
That's a great question, and let me address that in two ways. First, let me just say that when we talk about juveniles and being charged as adults, I want to first say that we're talking about those persons that are 16 and under that have committed what we call one of the 7 deadly sins. Right now, the state of Georgia says that if you're 17 years old, you are considered an adult within the criminal justice system. So if you are 17 and you commit a felony or a misdemeanor, your case is handled in state or superior court. The law does not allow for you to be, your case to be handled in juvenile court. A couple of things. I will say this. When we're talking about charging children as adults, I take those cases very seriously. And I can tell you that the protocols that we put in place in the DA's office when I became DA is that any case or any matter where a child can be charged as an adult is reviewed by a team led by me to make those decisions, so that I'm aware of every single case where we're charging someone, again, 16 and under in the adult system. And I make those determinations with a long list of guidelines, with the idea that our preference is to handle any case that we can and that we feel is within public safety in juvenile court. But there are some circumstances in some cases where that's not appropriate. But we do our best to try to push those young people to juvenile court because of the services that you can receive, because of what we know about brain development, and because we know that prison is not going to necessarily solve all the issues when you see a 16-year-old commit a serious enough offense to be charged as an adult. Second, I will say that I have been actively and openly supporting the movement to change the age of where children can be charged, or this not, let me say it this way, to raise the age, because nothing is going to change if anybody commits a certain offense of the 7 deadly sins, you can always be charged as an adult. What I would like to see, Georgia is one of 2 remaining states where our age for juvenile court remains at 16. So I do support raising the age to 18. Honestly, I would love to see it 21, but it's baby steps. And so I have been working with multiple organizations in hopes that down at the legislature, which is where this would have to happen, it would require a state law change where I'd like to see juvenile court be given jurisdiction over our young people at least through the age of 18, again, where we know brain development hasn't fully formed at 18, and where we can continue to give those services that we think our young people need. Third, one of the things that we rolled out just last year is our STRIDE program. It is our newest diversion program, and it's called STRIDE, which stands for Stopping Trends of Repeat Incarceration with Diversion, Education, Diversion and Education. It is a pretrial diversion program that is aimed at youth from 17 to 24. And how this differs from our prior programs is it in particular is aimed at offenses that normally you would not see in traditional diversion programs. Some of the charges that we allow in this program are the sale and distribution of drugs, entering auto or theft of auto, burglary of non-residential buildings, smash and grab retail thefts, robbery without a firearm, and other offenses that normally would not be considered for diversion. And so I am very happy to say that during this COVID time, we had to migrate our STRIDE program, which is a physically intensive program. It involves counseling, it involves community service, it involves civic engagement. It's meant to really be a program that connects our young people who even get individual mentors. And so you can imagine during COVID how the challenges we faced with all of a sudden our participants who are used to coming in and then they weren't, but we were able to successfully migrate to a virtual program with all of our services and all of our mentors. And I'm happy to report that we're going to be having our first graduation of our successful applicants that completed this program, some of which had offenses that normally would see them digging deeper into the criminal justice system. And we're happy that with this type of program that's dedicated to giving them individualized treatment and services can divert them away from the criminal justice system. And we are looking forward to introducing our second cohort here virtually, hopefully in the next 30 to 60 days, and start that new course. So that's some of the work that we're doing with our young people. in an effort to avoid having them go through the adult criminal justice system. Again, all of the things I've mentioned sometimes are not the right fit for every young person. There will be some instances and some circumstances where public safety demands that we perhaps incarcerate a young person, but we like to see that as the exception and not the rule. So we start with the premise of, is there something in our toolbox that we can use to address this situation differently? And that's our approach to dealing with the youth in our criminal justice system.
Appreciate it very much, Ms. Boston. Couple of things, concern that we see that are really growing. The white supremacy is become a serious threat to domestic violence, I mean to domestic terrorists, if you would. It's being in the South, we not too long ago had a group of white supremacists came to our mosque with guns. We discussed with them, I think it was last year, not only targeting to our mosque, many communities across the country. So that movement is very serious, and we take it serious in the light of the politics of election. We don't know which way the direction is going to the outcome of the election. If Biden win, Mr. Trump lose, what does that mean to the white supremacists? Are we expecting more violence? Are we ready as a community? What do we need to do to be proactively engaged? And second, also before you leave, I would say from your good office, from the chief of police and from the Dekalb County's public safety director, if we can put together with the community liaison so that this kind of issues we will engage and discuss on an ongoing basis rather than like one-time shot. You know, these problems are very serious. It's not going to go away overnight. With the judges' help, all of us together, if we could form like a community liaison so that periodically, every quarterly, we can meet and discuss those concerns of the community, the concerns of the law enforcement, and forge partnership to combat those concerns. What do you say to that?
So briefly before I leave, I'll say I obviously these are concerns that are valid and that we share. We know that FBI Director Christopher Wray has indicated that white supremacist and extremist groups are the #1 group in domestic terrorism within our country. And of course, you know, we are not excluded in DeKalb. What I can say is that we stand ready to work with our law enforcement partners, both state and federal, to address any issues around hate crime in our community, whether that's based on race, religion, sexual orientation, or otherwise. Additionally, we know that Georgia finally passed a hate crime bill that was signed by our governor in the special session earlier this year. And again, we will work in concert with our law enforcement to protect all of the DeKalb community. And if we get information where we feel like these groups are planning anything, just so you know, we are on the forefront of getting information. Anytime the FBI, especially our federal partners, has this information, it is shared with us in law enforcement to hopefully prevent any instances of violence in our community, and they've done a good job of that. But were we to see any instances, I can tell you that our law enforcement community would be prepared to act swiftly, and your district attorney's office would be prepared to prosecute anyone to the fullest extent of the law that uses hate, whether it be, again, aimed at race, religion, or sexual orientation in our community. We would use everything in our toolbox to hold those folks accountable.
Appreciate it. Well said. Imam Nasser, especially waiting, he said he has 2 questions. Imam Nasser, the floor is yours. Who do you want to address a question to? And go ahead, sir.
Well, thank you all, and thank you very much for all of you, the organizer, Imam Wazir, the Commissioner, Public Safety, Police Chief, DA, Imams, community members. My name is Nasir. I'm a member of the Somali community in Dekalb County. A lot have been said, and I don't want to repeat on those issues that has been touched. I have only two questions. The first question is for our law enforcement community and leadership. How do we avoid in our communities and our county and our city the things that happen in other cities like the Minneapolis? I'm talking about the death and the murder of George Floyd and the things that follow after that, including it happened and as you know, Minneapolis is another city where there is a community from East Africa, Somalis, Ethiopians, Sudanese, and so on, and other multi-ethnic city. And after that incident, at the death of the George Floyd, what happened, the crime has been committed and the police, they just stand by and they don't do anything. I'm talking about robbery. I'm talking about people has been beaten, shops has been broken, but the police on the sideline, I don't care, attitude, you will need me and all these things. So how do we avoid a similar incidents that to happen in our communities? So you can address that question. And the second question is about the youth. We talk about a lot, convicting the youth. We have in prison, we have a lot of facility when it comes to the convicting. But before that, what do we have in place when it comes to the youth empowerment, like having a summer camp, a facility allocation, a funding for the sports, soccer, basketball, and so on, and the employment encouragement. I know some companies, they say we cannot hire a certain age. So do we have like organization or groups or on a county level or the government level, any program to address the youth issue? These are two questions I have, Imam, for our leadership. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Who can address those, answer those questions? Chief, are you there?
Yeah, I can answer the first question.
Okay.
I'm going to answer the first question about how do we not allow that to happen here in DeKalb County. And one of the first things that I always say is that you need to bridge the gap with the community before you need it. You can't start building a bridge when you need it. So you have to do it now. Right now we are in good stance with the community. We have not had those protests. We have not had those incidents, but we do know that anything can change at the drop of a hat. What we want to do is we want to evaluate the training our officers are getting and making sure that they're being trained in the best way possible. And also researching training that's available to see if it's something that can help our officers be better at what they do. So that's number one, is not allowing our officers to find themselves in that situation. Second, community relations is very big. If we work with the community now and we instill that trust based on our actions, I think it'll be a little easier if we find ourselves having to deal with a negative issue. We all know it can happen at any moment, but if we work behind the scenes to try to make sure that our officers are adequately trained so it doesn't happen, and also work with the community so that they know what our stance are, I think that will go a long way. So if it was to happen, then we need to be prepared again in being readily available to handle any protests that may come our way. We're currently looking to better train our officers as it relates to protests, because protest is an art. Being able to handle it without letting it get too out of control is something that you need to train for, which we're actually doing now. We don't want to train when we need it. We want to train before we need it. So I believe just being open eyes, being honest, with what you need to improve on and working to improve it, and working with the community, I think that will go a long way in keeping us out of the news and allowing some of those incidents that have happened in other places from happening here.
Appreciate it. The second part of the question, Mr. Lumpkin, you want to say anything, please?
There was some noise in the background. I could not hear you. Imam, give me the question again.
I would say if you want to add to it any answer to the question, basically an assurances to avoid similar problem like what happened in Minneapolis, that will not happen in our community in any one of your officers.
What happened in Minneapolis was just a crime, and it should never have happened in any police agency. We don't use those techniques that was employed and have not used those in I don't know how long, but you don't place your knee on a person's neck. That's just a crime. That's a criminal act. And we asked our officers, and the culture that we're trying to develop is that they have to protect themselves, and they have to have the courage to confront by protecting themselves, and don't let your partner do stupid things. Don't let them commit administrative suicide. Do not let them commit criminal acts. The culture and the supervisors enforce that. That's the culture that we want. We want our officers treating people, interacting, engaging people in the same manner that they would demand of another police officer, any other police officer, engage their mother, brother, father, son, daughter, etc. We want, you would not treat your son in that manner, or your father or your mother, so do not treat anyone else this manner. Those are criminal acts. We have to have the courage to confront each other and ensure that we get the little things right, and we won't have those small things. Now, will bad things happen? The police perform a very complex job, and sometimes they err. We are all human. We hire people from the human race. We train to try to prevent those, but we cannot promise you absolutely that someone will not make an error. We want our culture to prevent those errors that we can. We want our leadership to have the courage to confront and train people. And in situations like the integrated communication and tactics, the people who are not armed with a firearm, there are certain communication and tactics that you can use that reduce the risk of anyone being harmed. And that's what we want.
Thank you so much, Director Lumpkin, that assurances. And I'm glad.
Can I add something to that, please?
Go ahead, please.
I just want to add that if and when something like that or even remotely close that happens here, that you guys can rely on us to be open about it, transparent about it, and take swift action. We're going to make sure that our officers have due process, but if they do anything wrong, we will definitely handle it immediately. We're not here to hide the fact if we make a mistake, we will address it. But what you do before that time comes is that you hold your officers and your supervisors accountable. If you let them know now what you're willing to tolerate and what you won't, I think you set the tone to hopefully not have that occur, because they know that it won't be tolerated in the department. So as Director Lumpkin said, it's about changing the culture and letting them know that supervisors will be held accountable, our officers will be held accountable, and if we need to take action, then we will.
Well said. Thank you so much. With that also, as a time getting like 15 minutes or so left, what leader for the youth? Amir, brother Amir, are you there?
Hey, brother Imam. Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, go ahead, Imam, brother Amir, and address your concern on behalf of the youth. What you see is as a problem, a challenge. What do you want from the law enforcement community and the community at large to do about it? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure thing. First and foremost, thanks, guys. In interest of time, I just want to kind of maybe give you guys a short bio about me, and then kind of get to my point, what I think would be beneficial. And I said that to say that life can kind of take you two ways. It's how you kind of respond to adversity. So I said that to see how can we partner and how can I bridge the gap and share my experience and my opportunity to kind of, one, uplift the youth that might be going through similar things and might have issues, problems, and challenges. I think opportunity is, one, identifying at-risk youth individuals that we see on paths that aren't conducive to where we want them to be as parents, as community leaders, as community law enforcement, bridging the gap to find out what are ways that we can create programming, create consistent dialogue, whether even if it's something as small as partnering with the counties and Dekalb and figuring out how we can put together community service initiatives to where people can come together as a community and with the help of lead mentors, positive role models, positive influencers, whether it's in the social media space or in real life, on how we can help the at-risk youth come together and just kind of use their time in a more positive and productive manner, and also share experiences where, you know, sometimes it's not always the most prettiest or always the best, but it doesn't necessarily have to reflect that it's a bad ending, right? There's a saying in life, it's never how you start, but how you finish. That's one of the biggest things that kind of impacted me and was my drive and my motivation. So for me, I guess my question and my opportunity to kind of challenge the leadership here is finding ways that we can create more engaging, whether it's, like I said, whether it's community service initiatives that we can kind of do to spark our time, whether it's, like Pastor Moore said earlier, creating dialogue where we can have like maybe basketball tournaments, things that are engaging to people to bring the youth together so that we can kind of utilize the opportunity to kind of mentor in a uplifting way to kind of engage and be more productive in our society. So my question is like just trying to find ways, what is it that we can do as a community within the CAB or partner with the CAB or whatever with nonprofits to kind of like have resources or programming so that there are abilities where people can be active and be productive.
And may I just say something very briefly, if it's okay, Imam?
Yeah, please.
So I would like to say, just with the courts, if you all ever want to come to the DeKalb County Superior Court, and particularly, so I'm Division 4, I have opportunities where our youth, and it doesn't matter their ages, whether you would like to bring third grade class, fifth grade class, high school students, or if it's just you all want to get together and just as a group come by the courts, and I will plan a full day or half a day, or if you just want a couple of hours just to have conversation with the court, so our community can, number one, see, you know, what happens in the courthouse, but not only that, but if there are issues that you want to address, you can bring it to the courthouse. And so you can kind of educate yourselves on the process. And so I'm always willing to do that. Imam has all my information, and anytime, you know, with the exception of hopefully at 2021, I will be able to resume doing that in person. But if we can't do it in person, I'm willing to do things virtually just to kind of educate everyone about what we do and how we can assist.
Excellent. Chief, you want to add anything to Amir's question?
Well, you know, COVID kind of puts a damper on what we can do, but I will tell you that the police department, we were in the schools teaching gang resistance and education training, trying to keep the youth out of drugs. We also were in the process of creating a youth dialogue. And that's where we wanted to bring officers in and just have a roundtable with the youth. We wanted to make sure that we were able to have conversations with them voluntarily so that they could ask us whatever they wanted, because we do think that they need to be able to speak to law enforcement and ask whatever they want without any fear. So we wanted to create that. In addition to working with the Department of Juvenile Justice, but with COVID, and as you know, things are just limited. But as it continues, we're just gonna have to find ways to become more flexible and work along with Zoom. Just with school being out right now, it makes it a little bit more difficult because we are trying to keep the youth safe as well. But if anybody has any ideas or wants to partner up with any future initiatives, Mir can reach out to us, and we can definitely include him in anything we feel that would be beneficial to have him present.
Pastor Moore, do you have any question to any of our panelists?
Not at this time, Amir. Matter of fact, I also work with the DeKalb Pastor Christian Alliance, so I met with most of this group on other occasions, so I don't have any other questions at this time.
Okay. Now, toward the last two items on the agenda, establishing community liaison. What is your thought on that, Judge, and what is your thought, Sherief, and what's your thought, Mr. Lumpkin, Don't you think that we need a community liaison to bridge the gaps, working on ongoing basis, and instead of problem, bring us together? Sometime opportunity can need to give us to work together. What do you think?
I think the community.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Sheriff.
Okay, I just jump back in. I think a community liaison is good because that individual will bring their concerns to the community as well as all of us, more so the sheriff's office. But then it keeps from having 3, 4, 5, 6 thoughts or conversations going on. And with that said, because you may have, instead of having a conversation with 20 to 100 people, when you have a liaison, it's factual. You get in a one-on-one conversation, and you can have that person to take it back to the community as what thus says the sheriff or what thus says the judge. So again, that will help us out, and that way you will get the facts and allow us to come to to come together and to work to see what we can do, because we don't know a whole lot as to what's going directly with individuals, but if we come together and have a community liaison and tell us their concerns, we're more able to address them one-on-one than to try to address so many. Because think about it, you will have 10 concerns, but it's the same concern, in other words, from 10 different people. So, yes.
So you do agree there is a need for it, then you can probably assign somebody from your good office, and the same thing, Mr. Lumpkin?
I'm sorry, Brother Imam, were you talking?
No, I was saying, so you agreed to the need to have a community liaison, so that from the sheriff office, from your good office, you would assign somebody there, and the same thing goes maybe to the judge, and maybe goes the same thing to Director Lumpkin and Chief Ramos, so then we will have the same in the community, and I'll be discussing and they will designate. This way we can work on these issues.
Yes, and that's why we have my community relations manager, Miss Lisa Wiley. She's very good on keeping up in touch with the community and see what's going on to make sure that we are out there in the community, but also that the community is a part of our agency as well. So, and as you can see, we put in the chat the phone number. Should there be any concerns or anything that we can do, just reach out to us and let us know. And we'll try to do the best we can, especially with the COVID going on, to making sure that everybody is social distancing and that safety.
Director Lumpkin.
You can count on us as well.
Yeah.
You can count on us as well. I mean, it's always positive to know who to reach out to. I think that's paramount in keeping the communication lines open. So definitely we'd be interested if you need a liaison from our office or you want to contribute one to ours. We would definitely love that point of contact.
Excellent. Well said. And now also there were our legal advisor, Mr. Danfordio, put 2 questions. I probably have seen in the email. The AIC advisor, Mr. Danfordio, said he needs to know the status of the President's task force on the 21st century policing. And second, what is the status of the executive order on safe policing for the safety of the community? Director Lumpkin.
That question would be more appropriately directed to Chief Ramos, and then I'll come up with the finishing on those.
Okay.
She directs the police.
Okay. Chief Ramos?
I'm sorry, sir. What was the question?
The question he was asking the AIC lead media advisor, what is the status of the President's task force on 21st century policing?
Okay, I think that touches on several topics, and unfortunately, I don't have the list of what they all touch on, but I think 21st century policing really focused on bridging that gap with the community and how we can do that. In order for me to touch on each pillar, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'd have to look them up if you wanted me to address each single one. But I do think that we are definitely improving our community relations and how we're interacting with them, how we're doing our town halls, how we're inviting the community to meet the majors via Zoom. We're definitely doing the best that we can surrounding COVID, and I think we were doing a great job prior to COVID and just making sure that the communication was there and present, and that we listen to the community, to their concerns, address them, provide them feedback, and just actually keep the lines of communications open.
Thank you. And then the second part of his question, Chief Ramos, he said, what is the status as of the executive order on safe policing for safe communities?
I'll take it. The challenge with the executive order, from my perspective, is that it was essentially only police on the task force that was appointed by the Attorney General. And to solve the problems, as you are speaking today with this group, you have people from different walks of life speaking to the issues, the problems, the opportunities, etc. There's great weight in the 21st century policing. The report, although it could have been better if Congress had authorized a commission as was done in the 1930s and 1960s. We ought to study the freedom, life in America at least every 50 years or so. The Johnson's, the Great Society, and the 1968 report was the basis for a significant change. The 21st century, when we met with the president regarding it, he could not get a commission through the Senate at that point in time. Chief Ramos has actually integrated most of all the pillars within the police department. Chief Conroy had done significant work on that prior to him retiring. The basis of good policing is a shared responsibility, that the citizens and residents of this community recognize that they have some obligations and responsibilities to provide for their safety, and the police and the government overall. Community-oriented policing or 21st century policing does not work in a dictatorial atmosphere. CEO Thurman and the governing authority of DeKalb believe in community-oriented government. You can see that in the approach towards the attack towards the pandemic, how he has been out leading, how the commissioners have been out leading, trying to keep the safety, health, and welfare of our citizens being number one. The food distribution, we were providing food distribution, mask up, DeKalb, sanitizers, etc. 4 months back, and we have done things that other counties have not. That's the overall safety of our community. Provide food scarcity has been a problem, and it is more of a problem. 40% of Americans now are worried about how they're going to eat. But DeKalb has been a leader because of its government. We will build the best public safety department because we are operating under an administration that is a community-oriented government.
Excellent.
If I can add to that, Director did very well, but I actually was able to pull up the pillars, and I wanted to say that I think we're looking pretty good, and I thank Director Lumpkin for pointing out all the things that we're doing. But we're talking about building trust and legitimacy, which I think we do by just being open and honest and just being open to these type of conversations and always being able to answer things as truthfully as we can. Also, you have policy and oversight. We've done a good job with policy. We've been reviewing policy. As things come up, we want to stay current. So there have been some policy changes to make sure that our officers understand what is expected of them. One of those being the duty to intervene that we implemented, making sure that the officers realize that they need to be held accountable, not only for their actions, but for their peers as well. Community policing and crime reduction, which is something I touched on earlier. I think we're continuously growing in that area. Training and education. Our officers are in the process of being CIT trained. 3/4 of the officers are already trained in order to deal with the mentally ill. It says here technology and social media. I think we're definitely growing in that arena as well. We have a very big footprint on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We want to make sure that not only are we pushing out information, but we're also sharing about what we're doing in the department. Officer safety and wellness, we're training. We're also in the process of hiring clinicians to take care of our officers so that they can in turn take better care of our community. We have the mental health crisis unit that rides along with our officers to make sure that they have someone with them that can help them when they encounter these mental health behavior crises out there on the road. So when we talk about those pillars of the 21st century policing, I definitely think we have them covered, and we will continue every day to strengthen each pillar so that we can bridge this gap with the community. It's a constant challenge, a constant devotion that we dedicate ourselves to every day.
Thank you so much. It's well said. And you ended up in a very powerful statement to stick to the challenge and working together to make our community all safe. And I want you all to mark our next meeting, virtual meeting, in 3 months. Once hopefully this election is over, we come back to the community February 4th, 3 to 5. How does it sound to you? February the 4th, Thursday. The reason choosing the afternoon, some of our members of the community working during the daytime. So tentatively, we suggested to meet because we're not going to resolve all these issues in 1 or 2 sessions. We had our first community bridging the gap back on June 10th. This is our second building on the first one, and we're going to continue. And I see Imam Osman just tune in. We are about to wrap up. Imam Osman, as you are a young, talented Imam working with a lot of youth, what is your concern and what question do you may have to our law enforcement communities before we wrap it up?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Imam Wazir. I apologize when you called earlier. I was a little bit occupied with my children virtually. Really, a lot has been said. And the only thing I would want to say is thank everybody who participated today. Judge Morris, all the leadership, and Director Lumpkin, I think Chief Ramos. A lot has been said, a lot of knowledge is in the house, and I think there's nothing else for me to say, but thank you all, and it's an honor for me to be here and be part of this. And especially Imam Wazir, who organized all of this. And another thing that I would like to say about our young sister, Hibaq, very informed and articulate. I want to let you know that we have a great asset in our community, and I thank you for your participation. And everything that I would want to say about the youth, you have already spoken about that, and congratulations to you. As well as Sheikh Nasser.
Thank you. And really, I want to thank all of you for your time, for your contribution, for your concern. We are all one big family coming together to combat the crime and make sure all of our community are safe. It's a personal touch, learning from the judge, her own father lost his life because of suicide, and enlighten us. That's going to be plugged in our mind as an education for years to come. And you are so appreciative in sharing your personal experience. And we're looking forward to really a lot to guiding the community, preventing that terrible suicide problems and depression, you name it. The community do need help. We need, allocation of resources to the community. We have a lot of faith-based communities and organizations are coming together. Sometimes they lack in basic resources. We need to have some resources allocated to the community so they can do after-school program. And then when the school is closed in summer, the school used to house them. When the school is over, they are out. So there may be communities, small minor thing is going to grow up to think. Some of the youth are maybe targeted by the drug dealers to recruit them to do all those terrible thing and end up, ruining their life. So it's incumbent on us as a society to help the new Americans. There is a cultural clashes sometimes between the parent and the children, between the children and their peers in the school. All those kind of things need to be sorted out together. All this can be addressed only when we come together. If we don't come together, you don't read or you don't hear the concern of the very community that you're serving, and then that's going to be end up with all serious problems. And I appreciate all of you for your time. And I'm going to summarize it. My team on the media, they're going to develop the video of this with your consent. It's going to be disseminated to all the communities, those who are here and those who are not there, to educate them. With that being said, I want to end up with this Ethiopian classical as you came in to listen to it, and give you and wave and say to you salam. Stay at peace. We love you. We love with the work you do. We are your partner. Know the community is behind you in supporting the good work that you are doing. And you are not alone. As officers, you are not alone. We are with you. And call on us. It works both ways. We call on you. You call on us when you need us. We respond, okay? Appreciate it all. Thank you.